for themselves. These things can cause your problems to go from bad to worse, just as in verse 17 says. David wrote this song, and he wrote it in the form of a prayer. He wrote it to ask God to forgive him, protect him, and to guide him. I have 3 points for you. Obey, watch and pray, and don't stray. 1. Obey. You know the commercial for Sprite that says, obey your thirst? Well, obey your parents and obey God, your Father. David asked God to feel his pain and see his trouble, to forgive all his sins in verse 18. David, like us, had done something wrong that he was not very proud of, and is really feeling the burden of the sins that he had done. Just like David asked, we have to ask God to forgive us too, because we can be disobedient. We just don't want to listen to God or our parents because we sometimes get to the point where we think we know everything. And we do not think we have to suffer the consequences of getting in trouble. We want to do what we want to do. For an example, you have your driver's license. Your parents tell you not to drink and drive. You not only drink and drive, but you also have a carload of your so-called friends with you. You have a really bad accident where you were at fault, and people are severely injured. You didn't get hurt, but you're in jail. You're in a lot of trouble, and you're scared to death. You are praying that those people do not die because of your carelessness. You are praying for God to forgive you for hurting these people. You are asking God to forgive you for disobeying your parents. And you have to ask your parents to forgive you because you did not listen to them. God gave us good parents for a reason. He allowed them to deal with issues, make mistakes, experience things for this reason. They are experience things, and for this reason, they are able to help us not go through those same mistakes. God gave some of us good parents that are not only good, but godly. For this reason, we should listen to them. They get their instructions from God, so we should get our instructions from them as well. Another example, your parents tell you not to go to this party, but you go anyway. You had a drink and left it unattended to go to the bathroom, and someone put something in your drink. When you came back, you did not realize what happened, and you drank it. You were knocked out on the sofa, and somebody takes you upstairs and takes advantage of you. When you woke up, you didn't know where you were. You knew what had happened to you, but you didn't know who did it. And to make matters worse, you had to call your parents to come get you. All of this could have been avoided if you had just listened to the warning of parental discretion is advised. The Bible tells us in Leviticus 19:3, every one of you shall revere his mother and his father. Revere means to respect and obey. Respect the fact that a lot of parents and God knows what is best for you, and they want nothing but the best for you. Remember, obeying your parents means to listen to them and follow their godly direction and wisdom, in which they get from God our Father. 2. Watch your pray. David asked God to see how many enemies he has and how viciously they hate him in verse 19. Sometimes our friendship with one person can cause enemies with others. Just like David, Jonathan, and Saul in 1 Samuel, starting with chapter 18, Jonathan and David were twins. The king who was Jonathan's daddy was hating on David mainly because he was jealous of David. David was getting too much attention after killing Goliath. You can find this starting with 1 Samuel 18:8-9. The king was trying his best to get rid of David, even though David was married to his daughter and best friends with his son. Saul still tried everything he could to think of to kill David. We have to be careful of those people who claim to be our friends. Always look for the warning labels even on people. They will sooner or later show that warning label, just like Saul did. We're still in chapter 18, but in verse 11. Saul throws a spear at David, trying to pin him to the wall. We only get 6 verses away to 17. And then all of a sudden, Saul wants David to marry his daughter. Warning label. Even though the king is the older one here, he is the one that's showing his young mind. He was not ready for someone else to have a greater victory than him. When you want to go over a friend's house and your mother or father tells you no, that they just do not feel comfortable with you being over there, please listen to them. If they say just fine, but the parent or parents could be trouble. 3. Do not stray. Don't wander away from God. Stay close to Him. He will protect you. David asked God to protect him from his enemies in verse 20 of chapter 25 and verse 2 of chapter 25. He asked God to not allow his enemies to triumph or win over him. Enemies are not just known as people, but they are also known as temptations, money, success, and lust. God, as our parent, cautions us about these things and tries to prevent these things from affecting us. He does this by His word, which is the Bible, and by prayer, because this is how we communicate with our Father. He knows what is going to happen before it happens. This is similar to the people who produce the CDs or movies. They know what is on the CD or in the movie because they made it. This is why they put the warning labels on the materials to tell parents ahead of time that they do not recommend the children to hear or view the material. To be careful. Parental discretion is advised. He asked God in verse 9 of chapter 25 to guide him, saying, He guides the humble in what is right, and He teaches them His way. If you don't think too highly of yourself, thinking that you're all this and all that in a bag of chips, and if you follow the guidance of God, your Father, He will lead you down the right path, and you will not be sucked up in the ways of this world. If we pay attention to the warnings, He will provide us through our parents. Here on earth, then He provides us through our parents here on earth. Then a lot of the things that we go through, we would not have to. God, as well as our parents, is only trying to advise us to keep us out of harm's way.